Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we're doing a This Year in Perfume, and we're all the way to 2006. And you know what's funny is as the years tick by, I keep thinking, okay, this is the year I'm not going to have hardly any fragrances in my collection. You know, maybe I'll have one or two and we'll have to start bunching years together and start doing 2006 and 7 and 8 together or something like that. It's not the case. It's not happening. Luckily, I'm still coming across loads of fragrances. This is actually a packed year. There's amazing designer scents in this episode, and there's also amazing niche scents. We've got some top-notch stuff from Etat Libre Orange and Parfum d'Empire and Andy Tower, and then we've got some amazing stuff from Burberry, Trussardi, Lalique, Varvatos. So there's a lot of different options in this episode, but as is tradition, we're going to talk about my scent of the day before we hop into the scents from 2006. And scent of the day is actually a vintage discontinued fragrance, go figure, and it is a Balenciaga perfume, and it's called Ho Hang Club. Now, Ho Hang Club is actually a flanker to the great Ho Hang, which I'm actually really torn on which one I like more. I might like the original even more, but I don't know. I really like this flanker. And this came out in '87, okay? And this is one of those fragrances that in 1987, even though it was targeted towards men, this could easily be a unisex fragrance. This fragrance has some real feminine leaning notes to it, which, you know, in the late 80s, we saw a lot of masculine fragrances come out that easily could have been feminine fragrances. Like, for example, Alain Delon Akitos came out, which went head to head with the winner of Christian Dior's Poison. It almost became that fragrance. And when it lost, it became Alain Delon Akitos. Also, Tenere by Paco Rabanne came out, and that's a huge indolic floral. Lots of different types of florals inside of that fragrance. Even though it is animalic and dirty, which I love, it has this big indolic floral facet to it. That was targeted towards men. There's a lot of different examples, and this is easily one of them. What I really like about this fragrance, though, is the structure of the perfume. You know, it has this orris note, so there is a little bit of powderiness to it. Patchouli kind of holds everything together, but you don't smell the patchouli like you would smell the patchouli in Psychedelique or, you know, Amen or something like that. You don't get the patchouli in that way. The patchouli, you can tell it's patchouli, you can sense it, but you're not going to get this heavy, chocolatey, you know, herbal patchouli, if you will. You're not going to get this green patchouli. But what ends up happening when you first spray is everything kind of hits you at once, and it happens very fast. And then it all kind of dries down very fast. So, you know, it's almost like you're in a sports car going 0 to 100 in 3.5 seconds, and then the driver just takes his foot off the gas, and instead of just letting the car coast, slams on the brakes until he gets back down into 30, 40, and then just kind of, you know, rides from there. Because you get this, you know, normal citrusy opening, almost chiffre in, you know, structure, if you will. There's a lot of oak moss. Like I said, there's patchouli and leather in the base, but there's this citrusy coriander basil thing happening in the opening. But it's the way that the flowers hit in the mid. You're hit with this rose. And the rose here is one of the main stars of the show. The rose really makes this fragrance. In fact, you could almost call this, I wouldn't go full on and call it a rose fragrance, but you could call this a rose fragrance. If you did, I would not blame you, let's say. I wouldn't call it a rose fragrance because I think there's a lot of other things going on. The spices, the woods, the musk. There's a lot of musk in here too. But it's the geranium, the carnation, and the rose. Those three florals almost tip it into, You know, they could have even released this as a daring feminine scent back in the 80s, but they released it for men. And I think it's the spices, the cardamom, the green basil, the thyme, you know, the oak moss. There's even a touch of olibanum, but you don't get it. It's not like a frankincense scent or anything like that. But if you're a fan of, you know, fragrances that don't necessarily have to shout, that stick close to your skin, because when you first spray this, you will seem like, you know, you're going to feel like the first 5 minutes that this is a shouter. This is a classic 80s, just traditional 80s powerhouse fragrance, but it's not. The driver takes his foot off the gas very quick, and right when you think it's just going to coast to the finish line, he slams on the brakes. And it really sits close to the skin, but it's a beautiful composition. And I actually have both versions. Let me see. Let me just see if I can find the second bottle. I'll show you. Okay, so here's how the two versions were issued. One was Ho Hang Club, and one was Le Club de Balenciaga. So apparently, the story goes that in some other cultures, ho hang has a bad connotation. To say ho hang to somebody means something lascivious, if you will. And so in certain parts of the world, Balenciaga decided they didn't want to go with the name ho hang. So they named it Le Club de Balenciaga. So it depends on which part of the world your bottle is issued. But it's supposedly exactly the same fragrance. I've pulled from both bottles. This is the newest one that I got from Anouge this year. I've had this one for years, and I can tell you that they are the same fragrance. You know, there's no doubt about it. They are the exact same fragrance, just different bottles. And in fact, they even did the same thing for Ho Hang. So just a little trick. If you see a fragrance that says, oh, what did the Ho Hang say? I think it just said Balenciaga Club, Balenciaga, I can't think of it. It'll come to me. But if I remember, I'll put it in the comments. But if you see a Balenciaga fragrance that has the same sort of like design as the Ho Hang, it's not a different fragrance. It's actually the exact same fragrance, just different, marketed to a different part of the world because they did not want to use the Ho Hang name. I'll leave it in the description if I remember. But I'm wearing it today as my scent of the day, and it's absolutely stunning. It's 100 degrees out in Texas in the middle of July. We went to the mall. It worked beautifully. The mall, of course, is in air conditioning, but it was beautiful today. I love wearing these vintage fragrances. I just feel like I'm wearing something different and special, and I enjoy, you know, breaking it down and the notes and all that good stuff. So the 80s are my favorite decade, but we're going to jump to 2006 now, which was, I was a senior in college in 2006. It was fun days in the life of Ramsey during that time of my life. But these are the perfumes in my collection that came out from 2006. And we're going to start with a mini that I have. And this is a fragrance I would really urge you guys to check out if you're into perfumes from the masters, because this is a Pierre Bourdon. And if you're into the lineage of perfume, you know, if you like to see how do they connect together, how does this perfumer who was the, you know, pupil of Pierre Bourdon and created Aventus, how does he use the pineapple note that Pierre Bourdon uses in something like this from 4 years earlier? If you're into that kind of stuff like I am, I would almost say this is a must-have, and you can still get it for pretty cheap. It's not, you know, the price has not gone crazy yet. I've got a couple of these 7 mLs. I wish I had a big bottle. I need to get one before the price goes insane. But 2006, this is called Ferré for Men. For Men, M-E-N. Now, the reason I am emphasizing that is Gianfranco Ferre came out with the fragrance in the 80s, and it was called Ferré Man. Okay, so this is Man from the 80s. This is Ferré for Men from 2006. And so this is the one we're talking about today. This is the Pierre Bourdon creation, and this fragrance is very interesting to me, especially if you're a fan of the mid-2000 Dior Homme DNA, because this has a little bit of that Dior Homme DNA with the lavender and the iris, okay? But, oh, this is such a good fragrance. What makes this interesting to me, though, is the way that Pierre Bourdon is playing with that pineapple note in the opening. And this is only 4 years before Jean-Christophe Hérault came out with the Ventus in 2010. Now, by then, Pierre Bourdon was retired, okay? But it smells very high class. It doesn't smell cheap. You know, this line of fragrances, there's a flanker that's out that I think is selling for 20 or 30 bucks of this particular line. The bottle looks the same. It looks like this shaped bottle. But it's a flanker. I think it's black or gray, or it's like a gradient look or something. So this line was considered a cheapie, but this didn't smell cheap to me. The florals here, you get some iris, you get some jasmine and rose and orange blossom and geranium and black iris even. And the base is oak moss, sandalwood, patchouli, vanilla, vetiver, musk, tonka, and what smells like, there is a convincing ambergris note in the base too, but it's that, you know, think about Dior Homme, Arpege Pour Homme, think of that DNA, but with a Pierre Bourdon twist. And that's what makes this fragrance so interesting. If you're into the lineage of perfume, I would highly suggest you check out Ferré for Men. And again, it goes without saying, but to me, it's completely unisex. Anyone could wear this. But that whole metrosexual vibe, you know, that was popular in the mid-2000s. And this is in that same DNA to me. Okay, next, we're going to jump to a John Varvatos fragrance. And this is a spicy, leathery fragrance from 2006. And it's called John Varvatos Vintage. Now, Vintage is actually one of the most popular John Varvatos fragrances, and it's one that, you know, if you're just a casual wearer of fragrances, this is one that you may actually know and wear. It's popular with people who are not big frag heads. For whatever reason, I think it does things just a little bit different enough that it interests people like that, but it's not so wild and different that the frag heads tend to really, you know, flock to vintage. But for me, I just never took to John Varvatos Vintage the way that others did. I like it, and what's interesting about it is Rodrigo Flores Roux created all of the old Varvatos fragrances, and this has both white lavender and a note called Santolina. Now, Santolina, some people actually think is a type of lavender. It's not. It's called cotton lavender as slang. People call Santolina cotton lavender for slang. But it actually smells nothing like lavender. It actually smells more like chamomile. Okay, so if you ever smelled fragrances that have chamomile in them, like for example, if you've ever smelled Fleur du Mal, that chamomile note is very close to what you'll get in the opening of Vintage. You also get white lavender, okay? So you get lavender and you get Santolina. And Santolina, along with that chamomile vibe, almost gives it this bitter berry-like smell. So it's very strange. It's a very strange fragrance because you get that chamomile smell, you get the lavender, you get that bitter berry-like smell, and then you're hit with the dry down, which tends to bring in balsam firs, green balsam firs, but with tobacco and suede. And you would think with tobacco and suede, I would be a huge fan of this. For some reason, there's just something about it that never truly clicked with me. I'll continue to give it wears. I mean, I have a full 100 and, you know, or 90 5% full 125 ml bottle. John Varvatos used to do these 125 ml bottles. The other thing I'll say is this bottle is the old EA bottles, Elizabeth Arden. Now they're being marketed by Revlon. I've never smelled the new Revlon fragrances, so I can't speak to the quality, but I've got the dry down here, and it is nice for a designer. I mean, I think I paid 20 bucks for this when Varvatos went through bankruptcy a couple years ago, and they were just selling everything off at fire sale prices, and I scooped up a couple of the Varvatos fragrances, and I like it. I will wear it, but it's not my favorite. I'd actually rather wear the regular John Varvatos from 2004 or Dark Rebel Rider, the leather one. That's my favorite Rodrigo Flores Rue creation. But vintage is nice. I mean, it's just not my favorite, but it is nice. I'll continue to wear it and maybe do a full review one day on my channel. Okay, next, we're gonna go to a niche house called Heeley, and Mr. James Heeley is the brand owner and perfumer, and he actually is the perfumer. And this is a fragrance called Cardinal. Now, if you're an incense fan, we're going to do back-to-back incense fragrances because the next one is an incense fragrance as well. But if you're an incense fan, a true incense fan, some of the most popular, just through and through incense fragrances are Avignon by Comme des Garçons. And Avignon is done by Bertrand Duchaufour, which is actually the perfumer who did the next fragrance from 2006. And there's also an incense that I would recommend to you, and it's called Bois d'Encens by Armani. And then Cardinal. Those are kind of the big three as far as just pure, almost like incense soliflores. Actually, there is one more. And if you've watched my, I did a This Is Not a Top 10 Olabanum and I actually ranked them. I ranked my favorite incense fragrances, but this was very close to the top. I won't give it away, but Incense Extreme. So there's 4. If you're a fan of incense, Incense Extreme, Healy Cardinal, which is from 2006, and Armani's Bois d'Encens, which I think came out in 2004, are kind of like the big 4. Those are the big 4 pure incense soliflores, if you will. And this one, I really like it because it does have a little bit of that pepperiness that you get in Bois d'Encens, but it lasts longer. And Mr. Heeley has blended the frankincense with myrrh and labdanum. So 2 of my favorite ingredients to be blended with frankincense, but somehow, even though the labdanum adds that, you know, leathery, the quality, the frankincense adds the smoky quality, the myrrh adds the resinous quality, it never takes its eye off of the prize. It never takes its eye off of the ball, which the prize here is the frankincense. Frankincense is always front and center, and the name is perfect. You know, you could totally see a cardinal in a Catholic church wearing this or smelling like this from being in Mass. And this fragrance really takes me back to being a kid because I was raised Catholic, and I can, you know, remember you walk into the Catholic church and the first thing you do is you dip your hand in that holy water, and it's that whole ritual. You know, you get the holy water, you put it on yourself, and then you're immersed. You know, as soon as you walk through the door, you're immersed in that smell. Sometimes they're actually burning incense if Mass is going on. And this really takes me back to that. In fact, I know that Mr. Armani made this to remind him of his days, you know, his early days of being a kid and going to church, but this actually reminds me more of church for me than Bois d'Encens. But I think this is actually a better true incense note. It just doesn't last very long. That's the problem with Bois d'Encens, is it lasts about, you know, 30 minutes to an hour. You've got to reapply this over and over and over, and this is an expensive fragrance. This is from Armani's Privé line. So, you know, for me, I would never buy another bottle of this. The only reason I did is I got an older bottle from Mou de Cire at a decent price. But for me, I mean, I would probably go with one of these two if I were going to buy. And this is a Andy Tower, by the way, Incense Extreme. This is what his old bottles used to look like. We have a Tower fragrance coming out from 2006 as well. And it's my favorite Tower of all time. But Healy's Cardinal flew under the radar for me for a long time, and I'm glad I have a bottle just to kind of experience it and wear it. And I do love incense. It's one of my favorite notes. So if you haven't checked out my This Is Not a Top 10 Olibanum / frankincense ranked video, check that out. Okay, second incense fragrance, back to back. This is from the Master, Bertrand Duchefort. And I actually prefer this one because it's not a pure incense soliflor, but Bertrand Duchefort is the magician when it comes to using incense. This is called Dzongkha. Now, Dzongkha came out in, again, 2006. And this is a vintage bottle. The new bottles have that black, you know, design that Puig changed it to once they purchased L'Artisan. But this is cardamom, lychee. One of the best uses of lychee I've ever smelled. The other great use of lychee is in a fragrance called The Moon by Julian Rasquinet. And this perfect iteration of peony. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Bertrand Duchefort used peony flowers in 2 fragrances. Diamant by Amouage, which is right over here somewhere, right over here, right here, and Dzongkha. And those are the best 2 iterations of peony I've ever smelled. And they were in a similar time frame. Diamant came out in 2002, Dzongkha came out in 2006. So he was playing with them in that same, you know, time horizon. And then there's vetiver, frankincense, masala chai, iris. The iris here makes the fragrance, honestly. Iris is such a special note when it's used properly. It adds that, you know, that powdery, furry, you know, that it's hard to explain what iris does in a fragrance. But, you know, it makes it, even if it's an amazing fragrance, iris to me makes it even more amazing. Some of my favorite fragrances have a well-done iris note, and this is amazing, with leather and papyrus. And Bertrand Duchefort, when it comes to incense, I mean, what a fragrance. So I would probably wear this over Cardinal, but I love them both as far as incense goes. Okay, now we're going to talk about a designer that doesn't get much talk anymore. It used to get a lot of hype, but now it's discontinued and very expensive. It's this spicy, floral, leather. I mean, it's woody, it's floral. There is a little bit of sweetness to it. There's even a little bit of mint in the opening, which you'll miss if you blink because it goes very quickly. But the fragrance is a masterclass in a designer scent. It's the very first scent from a brand called Viktor&Rolf. And the scent itself is called Antidote. Now, Antidote is discontinued and very expensive. This is a big 125 ml bottle. Thank God I have this. 50 ml bottles are going for 300. I mean, it's insane. But what a fragrance. I can't believe they discontinued this. I just can't believe it. You know, this is their best fragrance. This is better than Spice Bomb, better than Spice Bomb Extreme, better than Spice Bomb Night Vision, better than Spice Bomb Infrared, better than all that crap Viktor&Rolf is doing now. This is the best fragrance they ever put out. It's artistic. It was done by a master, Pierre Wargny, and Eleanor Massenet were the 2 perfumers who made this. I think this won the IFF Fragrance of the Year for 2006. I think. Don't quote me on it, but I think it did. And what's amazing about it is, now a couple things before I get started in telling you about what's amazing. Number one is that this fragrance also sits very close to the skin. So, you know, I mentioned earlier Ho Hang, Balenciaga Ho Hang Club is not a screamer, even though it's from the 80s. This is almost 20 years after Ho Hang Club, and it also sits very close to the skin. But if you're someone like me, if you're a fragrance fanatic and you love breaking scents down and smelling them and, you know, understanding how they change hour to hour and all that good stuff, if you make notes on your fragrances, if you're that kind of, you know, if you're into that kind of detail, this is a fragrance for you. Because even though this is a designer, this fragrance shows, and I haven't talked about this fragrance very much on my channel. Sometimes when you have a bunch of fragrances, some of them just get pushed aside. But this fragrance deserves more talk. Now, I mean, it needs to be revitalized. The problem is it's very expensive and hard to find, and you don't want to pay $300 a bottle. But if you can get 125 ml like this for a couple $100, I'd say absolutely. You know, don't pay $300-400, but a couple hundred for 100 ml or 125 ml, absolutely. And what's amazing about it is when you first spray, you're hit with spices, but I mentioned there's a little bit of mint, but there's citruses. It's citrusy, it's spicy, it's minty, and then it's mega floral. But that mega floral is chopped up into about 10 different florals. I mean, you're hit with so much at once. This is a very complex fragrance. You're hit with freesia, geranium, lavender, orange blossom, violet, and then there's also cinnamon and nutmeg. And so think about the composition I just mentioned. Citrusy, but there's cinnamon, nutmeg, cardamom. Okay? The citruses are bergamot, grapefruit, and mandarin orange. So the cardamom, nutmeg, and cinnamon, that spiciness kind of holds everything together. And then inside of that bubble, you know, you start getting those beautiful florals. But it smells very high quality for a designer. And then the base is oak moss, leather, gaiac wood, iris, and iris here is used beautifully as well. Just like in Dzongkha, the iris in Antidote is bar none. It's fantastic. Labdanum, amber, sandalwood, tonka, vanilla, white musk, cedar. So look at the different woods I just mentioned. Gaiac and cedar. And then you get oak moss, patchouli, iris, labdanum, tonka, and vanilla. So there is some heft to the base. It's also musky, but it's not a shouter and it doesn't last forever. So it only lasts about 6 hours, and it's 6 hours every time. It's not like, sometimes it's 5, but sometimes it's 10. No, this is 6 hours. That's it. You're getting 6 hours. And I will usually wear this in the summer because it helps it project a little bit more, but it sits very close to the skin, but it's an absolutely beautiful fragrance. If you wear fragrances for yourself and not for someone else, you know, if you're the kind of guy that you don't want everyone in the room to smell you. You know, when you walk into a room, you don't care if the people across the room smell you. You're not wearing fragrances for, you know, compliments or to get attention. You wear it for yourself. This is the fragrance for you. This is one that will make you smell different and make you stand out. The only downfall is this. The only downfall is this. My little cap came off. And it's been like this for a while. They break. And it's very common with these bottles. Now, it'll still spray. You can still put it on there and spray. It'll spray. But it's a little bit annoying. But it's an absolutely beautiful creation. And I'm very sad Viktor&Rolf discontinued this. I think it's the best thing they've ever done. Bar none. Okay. Now we have a niche brand. And the niche brand is Etat Libre Orange. And the fragrance we're going to begin with from 2006 is called Rien. Okay, now, Rien is Antoine Lee, who is the perfumer that's doing Eugene's fragrances, and I can't wait to smell his first fragrance, first of 3. Antoine Lee did all three. And this is a leathery, spicy fragrance. Now, there's actually 2 Antoine Lee fragrances back to back. This one's still available. The next one is discontinued. I love them both, but I think the next one's actually my favorite. This is peppery. It is leathery and it's spicy. Now there's also a little bit of iris, actually Orris Absolute. So Antoine Lee used Cistus Absolute, which is Cistus labdanum. He used Cistus Absolute, Orris Absolute, and then whenever he used the ingredients here, it's almost like the ingredients that he used are patented ingredients. They're captive molecules for whatever house, I don't know who the owner of those molecules are, but he used frankincense or purr, vetiver or purr, and patchouli or purr. And for whatever reason, maybe because they're captive molecules, maybe, it's just the way that he dosed it, but this is an absolute beast of a fragrance. Beast. And this is a modern bottle. This is not a vintage. But it is just huge. Everything about this fragrance is huge. There's also, and I mentioned it in a different Etat Libre Orange conversation, but this is another Eldo fragrance I really like. Another leathery fragrance I really like called Tom of Finland. And Tom of Finland uses this ingredient called safraline. And it's a synthetic version of saffron, obviously, and there is a big dose of it in Rien as well. But if you're a fan of intense leather fragrances, check this one out. Now, my favorite of the bunch, which also came out in 2006, is a fragrance called Je suis un homme. Now, Je suis un homme, basically, I think it translates to I am man, but I'm not 100% sure. And oh my God, this is so good. So some people compare this to Guerlain's Darby. I think it's closer to Bel Ami. I think it's closer to Hermès Bel Ami. I think this is a niche version of Bel Ami. And I think that for a couple reasons. That's what my nose tells me. But the second thing is, if you ever listen to Antoine Lee, he's done some interviews on a couple different channels, Persolays and Max Forte and stuff like that. If you ever watch Antoine Lee speak, he always mentions what an impact Bel Ami had on him. And unfortunately, this one's discontinued, but this is my favorite of the bunch because it is almost like a citrusy, liquory version of Bel Ami. The leather and the animalic notes in the base and the patchouli will remind you of Bel Ami, in my opinion. You will get that Bel Ami association, but he made it a little bit more of a niche flair, right? So you get cognac in Je suis un homme, you get clove and cinnamon and myrtle or bay leaf or whatever they call it. And then citruses, and the citruses last. I mean, they're there for the first hour of the scent. If you wanted to wear a leather fragrance in the summer, like right now, I would wear something like this. Because even though you get the leather and the animalics, that's citruses that just continue to last. Not like you blast it on 5 seconds, 10 seconds, the citruses disappear. No, they really last in Je suis un homme. And I'm very sad this is discontinued. I'm glad they kept Rien, okay? But Je suis un homme is amazing. And if you have tastes like me, this is, if I could recommend one Eldo fragrance, it would be this, Je suis un homme. It's my favorite Eldo fragrance. I really like Tom of Finland, and I really like Rien, but Je suis un homme is on another level, and I think it really is something special to Antoine Lee. I would guess, if I had to guess, I would guess he made this as an homage to Bel Ami, but I don't know that for sure. I'm just speculating. Okay, now we're going to do 1, 2, 3 designers, and then we're going to do 2 amazing niche fragrances, and then we'll be done. So the first designer is this. Burberry's London. If you've never seen the Burberry London box, this is like a tag, almost like you'd find on a Burberry purse. I love the presentation. The bottle has this coat on it, so it almost looks like, you know, it's like a coat, like a Burberry coat, because, you know, the bottles get cold and it needs a little jacket. And so it has a Burberry coat to keep it warm for winter. And this is a winter fragrance through and through. This is 2006. Antoine Maisondieu created this. And I think this is an amazing designer scent. I think it's still available for purchase. I don't know what the current version is because my bottles basically say Burberry Limited right here. And the other bottle says Interparfums. Interparfums, who I've often said they do a fantastic job with reformulations. But I don't know who currently makes Burberry fragrances. I would be shocked if it was still this good as the Interparfums or just the original Burberry Limited bottles. But I don't know. Honestly, I have no clue. I've never smelled the new stuff. All I know is I absolutely love this scent. As far as a designer fragrance goes, I mentioned how great Antidote is. This is not as complex as Antidote, but what it does so well. It has that lavender, cinnamon leaf, and then it has this amazing mixture of leather with port wine. There's a red port wine note in here that just makes it perfect for the holidays. This is Christmas. This is Thanksgiving. This is, you know, cool weather, sitting around a fireplace with the family, playing board games. It's that vibe, you know. If you're an old man and you've got your cardigan sweater on, I mean, it's that vibe, but I think this fragrance still screams youth. Somehow, this is a youthful fragrance. You know, it's somebody who still has that energy of youth. You know, if they do have a kid, they've got the energy to take care of the kid, put the kid down, and then go out and have cigars with their buddies afterwards, or go to the bar, or go play pool, or go bowling, or go to the nightclub, or, you know, they're not just, you know, gonna be homebodies. This has this youthful energy about it, and I absolutely love this fragrance. It also has tobacco in the base, which is perfect for winter. And there's this Gaiac wood and oak bark that mixes with this Apopanax. And Apopanax is sweet myrrh. And it is done to perfection here. This is a fantastic designer. The designers from 2006, I think we're getting to the end of when the designers were really pumping out these gems, because it really goes downhill from here, in my opinion. But even the next two designers I'm going to tell you about are absolutely fantastic. But if you've skipped this, anytime you see me with two bottles of something, you know I like it. And Burberry London is, you know, it was overlooked constantly because it was a cheapie. If you overlooked this during the years, I would urge you to go back and smell it. If you like wearing fragrances like Tom Ford's Tobacco Vanille for Thanksgiving, Christmas, this is a fantastic designer option, okay? And don't overlook it because it's cheap, is what I would say. It's absolutely fantastic. Okay, one of the greatest vetiver fragrances of all time, maybe I don't want to say the greatest, because Guerlain vetiver would probably just have to instantly be put there. Even though it's not my favorite vetiver, just on a personal preference level, let's say that, one of my favorite vetivers of all time is Lalique's Encre Noire, 2006. Encre Noire, you know, sometimes it gets a little flack because people say, oh, it has, you know, a lot of synthetics. Nathalie Lorson used lots of cashmeran and, you know, stuff like that. But it's this vetiver note. God. It's supposed to be, you know, the idea with the fragrance, which I absolutely love. Encre Noire basically means black ink. And if you look at the bottle, it looks like one of the old-time ink bottles that they used to use in the olden days when they would have the pen with the quill and they would dip it into the bottle and then write and then dip it back in. It has that black ink bottle. And she did a fantastic job. And by the way, this dark, earthy, broody type of vetiver, smoky, earthy, woody, is my favorite type of vetiver. The clean type of vetiver, the Guerlain vetiver, or Creed's original vetiver, that kind of clean vetiver, which you're probably supposed to wear that type of vetiver in the spring and summer, those aren't my favorite. I like these dark vetivers, and this is the king of dark vetivers. I absolutely love Encre Noire. It's one of my favorite vetiver fragrances to wear, and vetiver is not my favorite note. I really have to be in the mood to wear vetiver. But what she did here is she used a couple different types of vetiver. She used bourbon vetiver, Haitian vetiver, with vetiveryl acetate, which Yura Rose, who is in-house perfumer for Channel Ramsey, said that vetiveryl acetate is the #1 ingredient that a perfumer will use, okay? So whenever they're making their concoctions, the #1 thing used amongst perfumers historically in the majority of compositions is vetiveryl acetate. Even if you don't know it's there, a lot of times it's there. And she mixed that compound of vetiveryl acetate with bourbon vetiver, Haitian vetiver. She mixed it with cypress, okay? And cypress is a heavily underutilized note. I talked about it a little bit yesterday when I did the video, and I mentioned Halston Z14. I mentioned Max Gavari, the perfumer, and we talked a little bit about Halston Z14. There's a cypress note in that actually inspired Tom Ford to make Italian cypress, okay? And cypress, I think, is a very underutilized note. I think it should be used more in men's perfumery. And Nathalie Larson loves using this mixture of cashmere woods. If you ever see cashmere wood, it's not a real wood. It's a synthetic. Cashmere is basically what it is, and musk. And she usually adds some sort of pepper. She loves that combo of pepper and cashmere. And actually, I love the way she uses it too. She used it again in Zadig and Voltaire, This Is Him. But she did that composition with frankincense. But the idea was kind of the same. But she did for vetiver with Encre Noire, she did for frankincense with Zadig and Voltaire, This Is Him. I think they're both amazing compositions, but this is one of my favorite vetiver fragrances of all time, and it spawned multiple flankers. And the à l'extrême flanker is maybe even better than the original. I don't know. The original's really good, but it's so good. And this thing lasts on my skin forever. I know there's a lot of synthetics in it, but I absolutely love Encre Noire. And then in the same year, she released a perfume for the house of Trussardi, and it's called Inside Man. And this one is the one that I think is her masterpiece. Even though I just said all that amazing stuff about Encre Noire, this is the one that doesn't get talked about. This is the one that is overlooked by so many people. Look at the inside of the bottle. Look at that leather look inside. Look at that leather look inside the bottle. And again, anytime you see me with two bottles, you know I love a fragrance. And Trussardi Inside Man is this... there's only one way to explain it. It is, you wake up in the morning, you make a Italian coffee unsweet, okay? Trussardi's an Italian brand. Zero sweetness in this Italian coffee that you're making. You sit down at the kitchen table, you pull out a cigarette, and you have a smoke, right? That's Trussardi Inside Man. But in the opening, she started out with Japanese yuzu, which is, again, kind of like citron fruit. Japanese yuzu and citron fruit are underused in citrus openings, and she kind of complemented that with green basil and Sicilian bergamot. So it's coffee, unsweet, okay? This is not your local Starbucks $7 coffee that just smells like a bag, or tastes like a bag of sugar. Fake sugar at that. No, this is unsweet coffee, Italian style, in one of those little mugs, right? You're sipping it with tobacco, cigarette tobacco, to be specific. And you get the patented Nathalie Lorson pepper. That pepper I was talking about that she used with Zadig and Voltaire, this is him. You get that pepper and cashmere wood and musk, that trio, that holy trinity that Nathalie Lorson loves to use so much. But she made the base special here by using teak wood. Again, very rarely used wood. And teak wood adds this mysterious element. Not that an Italian coffee and cigarette in the morning isn't mysterious enough with yuzu in the opening, but then you add the teak wood to the base, and it is one of the best designer fragrances that you've never heard of, okay? That's the way that I would tell someone who has never heard of this. This is one of the best designers. Now, it's a designer. It's not a niche, okay? So if you go spend $500 on a bottle, don't be upset that it smells like a designer. It does smell like a designer, but it smells like an amazing designer. And the designers I just talked about, this, Burberry London, Antidote, just show how far we've fallen from the designer game from just 16 years ago. You know, 2006 is not that long ago. And it is absolutely shocking that we've fallen this hard on our faces. And you know, hopefully the designer game will come back one day, but the way that it's going, I have very little faith that that's going to happen. So that's why I've collected these discontinued, you know, designers. Antidote's discontinued. Trussardi Inside is discontinued. And I think they're amazing. And I would much rather wear this. I went to the mall today, like I said. All I smelled was Sauvage. I must have smelled Sauvage like 18 times. I smelled Marc Jacobs Daisy on one woman once. And I smelled Sauvage on every single man. How boring are you that you have to smell like everyone else? You know? I mean, come on. And so I'd much rather smell like something different. So the last two are two amazing niche fragrances, two of my favorite niche fragrances of all time. One of them I only discovered this year, and it's because I was stubborn. But I'm so glad I discovered this brand. The discovery of this brand was actually the discovery of the year for me. And this is Parfum d'Empire Cuir Ottoman. Now, the reason that I say, oh my God, the reason that I say that Parfum d'Empire is the discovery of the year is that every single fragrance I've tried from them is a winner. Every single one. I haven't tried one that has let me down yet. Fougere Bengal, love it. Musk Tonkin, oh my God, Musk Tonkin completely blew my mind. There is Ombre Rousse, which is another amazing one. And then Tabak Taboo is the final one that I bought. And wow, the Immortelle here in tobacco is something, you know, one of the most artistic uses of Immortelle I've ever smelled. But my favorite by far is Musk Tonkin and Cuir Ottoman. And Cuir Ottoman came out in 2006. And the reason I like it, if you know my taste, if you know what I love, you know leather is my favorite note, hands down. Then we'll have to debate what number 2 is, but leather's number 1. And this has a couple ingredients I absolutely love. It has leather and it has iris. And that combination of, you know, hard, spicy leather with, resinous notes like benzoin, labdanum, tolu balsam, but then the iris to just soften everything up. A little bit of powdery softness to go with that leather. Oh, it is so good. This is one of the best niche leather fragrances I own. And even though they're a little bit different, you know, I talked about the fact that there are some Roses I love and some I hate, but the one I absolutely love outside of Diaghilev is this. This is Great Britain. This is a $2,000 fragrance at retail. You know, you can find bottles for half price or less like I did. But Great Britain is a Russian leather. Oh, God. That uses this leather iris and, of course, other things. Castoreum, birch tar. That Cuir Ottoman doesn't have birch in it. But that leather iris combo, these two will at least remind you of each other. This was 110 bucks. This is $2,000. Okay, so if you want to get in the ballpark of something like Great Britain and you don't want to spend Great Britain money, obviously the first thing I would tell you is just go buy Chanel's Cuir de Russie. But if you can't, or if you don't want Chanel's Cuir de Russie, or if you already own it and you want something else, check out Cuir Ottoman. This is amazing stuff, literally amazing. And it's an eau de parfum. It almost feels like an extrait. It's absolutely stunning. There is a frankincense note in this too, along with a little bit of vanilla, but it never goes sweet. You know, the vanilla never makes it go syrupy sweet. I absolutely love Cuir Ottoman, one of my favorite leather scents. Okay, finally, the last one, and it is my favorite Andy Tower creation. It's my favorite Andy Tower fragrance, period. And it's from 2006, and it's called Lonestar Memories, okay? Lonestar Memories is my favorite Andy Tower fragrance because this fragrance is art in a bottle. You know, I've often said that's why I buy fragrances, because I want to experience art in a bottle. Lonestar Memories is that. This is his most creative fragrance. It's even more creative than L'air du Désert Marocain. It smells like a cowboy who just sat down after a long day riding on his horse. He takes his leather saddle off the horse. He takes his leather gun belt off. He sets it aside. He starts a fire. He goes to make a coffee. He has the coffee on the fire, making it old school, you know, in a copper coffee maker, and then he falls asleep and burns it. And you get this burnt coffee, dirty, animalic, leathery. There is that lovely, you know, Andy Tower uses Cistus labdanum, like, no, you know, him and Roja use labdanum in some of the most interesting ways. Roja loves labdanum, by the way, and I don't blame him. I do too. But Andy Tower is the other perfumer. Andy Tower is the other perfumer who uses labdanum in such an amazing fashion. And here, the labdanum gives off that, you know, resinous, smoky-like quality. And so imagine the cowboy wakes up after, you know, a couple hours, realizes he burnt the coffee. He tosses the coffee, replaces it with tea, and then he takes a bath with geranium soap. And he starts to kind of clean everything off. So that smokiness, that ashiness, it smells like there's iris in here, but there's not. There's carrot seed, which gives off this powdery-like effect, right? And there's dirty, sweaty clary sage, okay? Sweaty, dirty, almost like a cumin-like vibe in the opening, but it's not. It's clary sage with vetiver, myrrh, sandalwood, and tonka in the base. It is the most artistic fragrance, one of the most artistic fragrances I've ever smelled. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's a, you know how when you walk into an art museum, like you've ever been to the Chicago Art Museum, or, you know, one of the big ones in Dallas or New York or LA or Paris or wherever, one of the major art museums though, right? And you walk in and you see the different size photos or the different size paintings, And invariably, they always put one of the big giant paintings when you first walk in. And sometimes the most popular paintings are this big. And sometimes they're huge, right? The size of the painting doesn't make it good or bad, but imagine the scale, right? The giant painting, and you're just standing there in awe, and it's just huge. It takes up the whole wall. That's Lonestar Memories. It is grand. It is giant. It is immense. It's an immense fragrance. And the ingredients are top-notch. It is a little bit challenging, which I love. I love challenging fragrances. If you don't, you might smell this and go, I don't know why someone would like this. But if you're someone like me and you're going for art in a bottle, Lonestar Memories is by far Andy Tauer's best work. So that is my 2006 video. We kept it under an hour, which I don't always do. So give me some props there. And, you know, for everyone that's been supporting me in the channel and commenting and watching and liking, I really do appreciate it. It means a lot. I love doing this. You know, one of the reasons that I did this channel was to highlight the fragrances I love and talk with you guys about it. And every day I get recommendations. I get people, you know, reaching out and saying, hey, I want to send you this sample or that. I want you to try to smell this. The community that we've built here, the little tribe that we've built, is absolutely amazing. And, you know, I'm still taking it all in. Even though it's been 7 or 8 months now since I've started this channel, I'm still taking it all in. It still doesn't feel real, you know, that I have 1,400 subscribers. And even though I don't know every single one of you guys, I am grateful and thankful to every single one of you. And so that's my way of saying thank you very much for the support, for the encouragement, for the people who sent me samples. And I mean, I even had a subscriber send me a full bottle, which that's never happened in my life before. So I'm grateful to each and every one of you. So thank you very much. If you have experience with fragrances from 2006, please leave them in the comments. Or if you have experience with some of these I mentioned, tell me about them. I would love to know if your experiences are close to mine. You know, if your tastes are close to mine, if there are other fragrances from 2006 that I did not talk about, I would love to get your thoughts. Like, you know, I know there's a lot of fragrances I missed, big ones. Like I didn't talk about L'Homme by YSL or Terre de Hermes EDT. I didn't even talk about Terre. I could have. I have a sample. I didn't talk about it. I didn't talk about Black Orchid by Tom Ford. That's another one. I didn't talk about Versace Mano Fresh. So those kind of fragrances, you know, if you have experience with those, and there's some of your favorites, do leave them in the comments so I can know which one you guys like and which ones I should really go for, you know, because your collection is never truly complete. Not when you're in the fragrance game. There's always something else to smell, something else to go after. And while I'm doing a no buy July, that Arise L'Adore fragrance, which came in just a couple days ago, War and Peace, I bought at the end of June. Okay, so I'm still holding true to my no buy July. But if there is, you know, a fragrance that I should go for, I'll put it on the list and maybe check it out in August. So anyways, cheers guys. Thank you for watching. We'll keep it under an hour and I'll see you again tomorrow with another video. Bye now.